best companions to give the Muslims a shock, to make them come back to real Islam. And since then till today, every year Ashura was the inspiration of all Muslims, especially the lovers of Imam Hussein, to come back to Allah, to come back to the real teaching of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his holy progeny. For that we find that Ashura is the energy which is energizing the Ummah every year, and that is what we understand from the prophetic hadith when he said that Hussein is from me and I am from Hussein. And how can we understand that the grandfather becomes from his grandson? Only when we see that the Imam Hussein's movement gave life, revived in fact Islam, when Yazid and his regime and his people wanted to diminish and finish the light of Islam, but it remained shining and lightening because of the sacrifice, the greatest sacrifice in the history of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Well, we know, Mr. Moosawi, that every year Shia Muslims around the world mark Ashura in their own traditional ways. Now, one question is how important these traditional mourning ceremonies are in keeping the message of Ashura alive. When we see these processions taking place in Iran, we see different traditions taking place, for instance, in Pakistan, in Lebanon. Tell us about how these traditions serve to keep the message alive.
In fact, Islam being the religion for all human beings, and all human beings have got their own cultural diversity. Islam allows the diversity. They commemorate the sad event of Ashura in their own ways. But the main thing, the spirit of Ashura remains always alive. The teachings of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, teachings of sacrifice, teaching of struggling against injustice, the teaching of struggling against discrimination, that message remains all over the world in spite of the different ways of commemorating and observing the sad event of Ashura. So that is one of the ways that we understand that Islam gives the liberty to people to have their own traditions, but of course it should not give bad name to Islam and should not also use anything which is unlawful. But all of the word, we don't know. Now I can say very clearly that I personally, being the servant of the word Ahlul Bayt Islamic League, I don't know any country on the world where there is no majlis or ceremony or procession or commemoration of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. Even non-Muslims are now coming towards Islam because of Imam Hussein. And we have big hopes that Imam Hussein can be a big gate for non-Muslims to know the great values of Islam, which are in fact the values of every human being who is keen to see the justice and the freedom of human beings and the values of the human beings.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sayyid Muhammad Al-Moosawi, Chairman of the World Ahlul Bayt Islamic League, joining us there live from London with his comments. Thank you very much, Mr. Moosawi. Let's continue to take a look at the pictures that are coming in live from Iran's Aran Bidgol city. The morning processions taking place here. As I said, today is Ashura, the 10th day of the Islamic lunar month of Muharram. For 10 days, Shia Muslims particularly have been holding mourning ceremonies in remembrance of Imam Hussein, the third Shia Imam, who was martyred along with 72 of his companions in the Battle of Karbala against the forces of the then Umayyad Caliph Yazid, who was the second Umayyad Caliph. Imam Hussein, 14 centuries ago, decided that he didn't want to pledge allegiance to the Caliph because he said he was not following the teachings of Islam, and that's why Imam Hussein was saying, oppressing the people, and that's why he was not going to pledge allegiance to him. That led to a fight in the region of Karbala, currently in current-day Iraq. Imam Hussein and his companions were killed there, 72 of his forces against thousands of forces of Yazid. It was a brutal battle, and the Umayyad forces beheaded those who were martyred and took the women hostage. And that event has been remembered ever since. Imam Hussein's shrine and the shrine of his followers is located in Karbala now, in Iraq's city of Karbala, and that's where, of course, the main mourning ceremonies are held every year, and thousands of pilgrims from across the world head to Karbala in Iraq to mark the occasion there. Of course, here in Iran, traditional mourning ceremonies have been held for centuries, and people have very strong feelings toward Imam Hussein and his message, since it has had a lot of influence on the people's life here in Iran. It might be interesting for you to know that even during the years of the revolution in Iran, when they were fighting the former regime of the Shah, a lot was said about the message that the Ashura battle and Imam Hussein carried for them, and that they should be using that message and using his teachings today to stand against any kind of oppression and tyranny, to resist even if they think that their numbers are not that large. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, che tefle janbazi, che tefle janbazi. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, che ruhe jazi, che ruhe jazi. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, ajab saraf razi, ajab saraf razi. Bozorg Karbala kiye Ali, Bozorg Karbala kiye Zabih sarjoda kiye, Bozorg Karbala kiye Madal shuhada kiye, Mazlum Leinawa kiye. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, ajab delarai, ajab delarai. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, chemo evolai, chemo evolai. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, live images there from the Iranian city of Aran Bitgol. The mourning ceremonies taking place at the end of Ashura today, the 10th day of the lunar month of Muharram. Of course, we'll give you more news from the mourning processions throughout the news bulletins today. Now to Afghanistan, where bomb blasts have hit mourners marking the day of Ashura, killing scores of people there. One bomb went off in a mosque packed with a large crowd of mourners in the capital, Kabul. At least 54 people, including women and children, were killed. More than 150 people were wounded. The other blast took place in the northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif, killing 4 people.
Today was the day of mourning for Imam Hussein, and Muslims were commemorating his martyrdom on Ashura. This action is against humanity and against Islam.
The casualties were huge. We were not expecting such an attack to happen. We tell our enemy that we don't care about your attack, and we continue our mourning even if hundreds of us die in this way.
A Pakistani group named Lashkar-e-Jangwi has claimed responsibility for the bombings. President Hamid Karzai, who is still in Germany following the Bonn conference, has strongly condemned the bombings. Well, here's our correspondent in Kabul, Faiz Khurshid, with the latest on the story.